Once considered one of football's most promising young defenders, now charged with murder tonight. Authorities in Tennessee say one-time New York Jets linebacker Darron Lee has been arrested and charged with killing.
Buckeye Nation, it's your boy, Darron Lee here, a.k.a. the Manimal. I need y'all to follow.
On February 5, 2026, a quiet afternoon in Ooltewah, Tennessee was shattered by a frantic 911 call. Deputies rushed to a residence on Snow Cone Way for what was reported as CPR in progress. When they arrived, they found a woman lying motionless. She was already gone. And standing there, right in the middle of it all, was former NFL linebacker Darron Lee. The man who once celebrated a Super Bowl victory was now facing the most serious charge imaginable: first-degree murder. If you're new here and you love diving deep into the darkest corners of true crime, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to Midnight Crime, and click that bell icon so you never miss when we uncover cases like this one. Trust me, you're going to want to stay until the end of this one. Now, let's talk about who Darron Lee was before all of this. This wasn't just some random guy. We're talking about a former first-round NFL draft pick. Back in 2016, the New York Jets selected him 20th overall. He was a star linebacker out of Ohio State, the kind of player scouts dream about. Fast, aggressive, talented. He had everything going for him. 3 seasons with the Jets, then a move to the Kansas City Chiefs where he was part of the team that won Super Bowl 54. Sure, he was inactive during that game, but still he had that ring. He even had a brief stint with the Buffalo Bills in 2020. By 31 years old, his playing days were behind him, but he'd lived a life most people only dream about. But here's where things get dark. Because while Darron Lee was living that NFL lifestyle, there were warning signs that something was very wrong behind closed doors. In 2023, just 2 years before this incident, Lee was arrested in Ohio on assault and domestic violence charges. And when you read the details, they're chilling. According to the arrest report, he pushed a woman against a wall, threw her to the floor, and then struck her in the face and head 8 to 9 times with closed fists. 8 to 9 times. Let that sink in. This wasn't a momentary loss of control. This was sustained, brutal violence. So when deputies arrived at that house in Tennessee on that Thursday afternoon, they weren't walking into a complete unknown. They were dealing with someone who had a documented history of hurting the women in his life. And what they found inside that home, it was worse than anyone could have imagined. The victim, whose name authorities are still withholding out of respect for her family, had suffered what can only be described as horrific injuries.
Once considered one of football's most promising young defenders, now charged with murder tonight. Authorities in Tennessee say one-time New York Jets linebacker Darron Lee has been arrested and charged with killing his girlfriend. News Nation's Leah Lando is live tonight breaking down the case and what the former defensive star is facing now. Leah.
Natasha, Darron Lee is charged with first-degree murder in the death of his girlfriend. Her identity is not being released, and police say that he was arrested Thursday in Tennessee. Officials say when they arrived at the scene, they did try to save the victim, but they say they were unsuccessful. The 31-year-old former Ohio State linebacker played with the Jets, Kansas City, and Buffalo. That was from 2016 through 2020. Lee was a standout at Ohio State. He went on to play 58 games with the Jets, the Chiefs, and the Buffalo Bills before leaving the league. He was also named defensive MVP of the 2015 Sugar Bowl. Court records show he was previously arrested in 2023 on assault and domestic violence charges. Now, Thursday, he was charged with murder, tampering with evidence, and police say more charges could be pending related to the death of his girlfriend as the investigation is ongoing, and he is due back in court February 11th. Natasha.
Leah Lando tracking these details for us as they come down. Thank you.
Her body told a story of absolute terror. She had severe bruising around her head and eyes. Her arms and torso were covered in bruises. There was a suspected stab wound in her abdomen. And here's something that makes your skin crawl. There was what appeared to be a human bite mark on her shoulder. Think about that for a second. A bite mark. This wasn't just violence. This was rage. This was personal. Now, when Lee spoke to the deputies, his story was simple. Too simple, actually. He said he found her unconscious on the couch. He thought maybe she'd fallen in the shower. Just a tragic accident, right? But investigators weren't buying it. Not even close. Because when they looked around that house, nothing matched up with what he was saying. There was blood in places that didn't make sense if someone had just fallen in a shower. There was broken glass scattered around. And here's where it gets really interesting. Forensic testing showed that blood had been cleaned up in certain parts of the home. Cleaning supplies were left in weird spots, like someone had been in a hurry, like someone was trying to make something disappear. That's why they hit him with that second charge, tampering with evidence. And Lee himself? He wasn't walking away from this unscathed. He had visible injuries all over him. Marks on his face, on his hands, on his chest. The kind of injuries you get when you're in a physical struggle. When investigators found his cell phone, there was blood inside the phone case. Blood. Inside. His phone case. How does that even happen unless you've been in close, violent contact with someone who's bleeding? During the search of the residence, authorities also found alcohol, narcotics, and a firearm. We don't know yet how those play into what happened that day, but they paint a picture of what was going on in that house. And when detectives tried to question Lee about any of this, about the injuries, about the blood, about what really happened to this woman, he shut down completely. He refused to cooperate. He wouldn't talk. So deputies arrested him right there at the scene. They took him into custody and charged him with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. As of right now, he's sitting in Hamilton County Prison with no bond. Tomorrow, February 11th, he's scheduled to appear in court. And prosecutors are already saying that more charges could be coming depending on what else the investigation turns up.
Thank you for watching. We begin with breaking news. Just minutes ago, the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department released the name of the person arrested for an active death investigation in Ooltewah.
Local 3's Madison Sims is live in the neighborhood with this new information. Madison, fill us in.
Cindy, we've been here for several hours in this Ooltewah neighborhood trying to figure out the details of the death investigation, and we did just find out that the suspect in this case is 31-year-old Darron Lee. Now, the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office released a statement sharing that they responded to a call of an individual performing CPR, and once they arrived, they found that the female victim was deceased. We spoke to neighbors in this neighborhood to figure out what exactly they knew before we had the opportunity to get this information.
We were on our way out to go somewhere, and we were backing out, and we happened to look down there and saw these police cars and thought, oh my goodness, what's going on?
Just after 1 o'clock Thursday afternoon, Hamilton County Sheriff's deputies were dispatched to a home on Snow Cone Way in Ooltewah for a death investigation. One of the residents we spoke with lives just a few doors down from the home. She tells us a couple lived there and they had only moved in just a few weeks prior. This individual declined to do the interview on camera, so we won't be sharing her identity.
As I was backing out, I looked down there and I saw a very tall man with handcuffs on behind his back, and police were escorting him out. And then I couldn't see anymore. They went behind a car.
That resident shared this footage from her home's Ring camera with Local 3 News. In it, you can see an ambulance and sheriff's deputy vehicles leaving the home. Later that evening, law enforcement is still seen there. Now, we're also learning that Lee is facing the following charges: tampering with evidence and first-degree murder. He is in custody at the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, and as we learn more, we're going to be sharing that on air and online. As of right now, the victim in this case will not be identified until her family has been made aware. Reporting in Ooltewah, Madison Sims, Local 3 News.
The victim's body was sent to a forensic center for an autopsy. Her family is being notified. Somewhere out there, people are grieving a daughter, maybe a sister, maybe a mother. Someone who went into that house and never came out alive. And the man who's accused of taking her life? He's someone who had every advantage, every opportunity, and a documented history of doing exactly this kind of thing before. That's what makes this case so frustrating, so heartbreaking. Because this wasn't unpredictable. In 2023, when Lee was arrested for beating that woman in Ohio, that was a red flag the size of a football field. The system knew he was dangerous. There was a record. There was evidence. And yet here we are, 3 years later, looking at another woman who paid the ultimate price. Think about what was going through her mind in those final moments. Did she know what was coming? Had she seen his rage before? Had she tried to leave and been pulled back in by promises that he'd change? We see this pattern over and over again in domestic violence cases. The violence escalates. The apologies come. Then it happens again, only worse. And sometimes, like in this case, there's no coming back from it. What's chilling is how Lee tried to control the narrative even after she was gone. The story about finding her unconscious, the suggestion that maybe she fell in the shower, the cleaned-up blood, the strategically placed cleaning supplies. He wasn't just trying to cover up what happened. He was trying to rewrite reality itself. But blood doesn't lie. Forensic evidence doesn't lie. And those injuries on her body were screaming the truth that he refused to tell. Now prosecutors are building their case. They've got the physical evidence, they've got his prior arrest, they've got his refusal to cooperate, and they've got a timeline that doesn't add up to anything close to an accident. First-degree murder means they believe this was intentional, premeditated. Not a crime of passion, not a tragic mistake. Murder. So here's what I want you to think about. How many times does someone have to show you who they are before we believe them? Darron Lee showed everyone who he was in 2023. He showed them with his fists, with his violence, with his complete disregard for another human being. And someone still ended up alone in a house with him, trusting him, maybe loving him, and it cost her everything. What makes someone who has everything, fame, success, money, throw it all away for violence? What goes through your mind when you're hurting someone you're supposed to care about? And how many more cases like this have to happen before we take domestic violence seriously the first time, not the last time? If this case got under your skin like it did mine, do me a favor. Share this video. Let people know what happened. Let them know that domestic violence doesn't end with an arrest. It ends when we stop ignoring the warning signs. Hit that subscribe button for Midnight Crime, because we're going to follow this case all the way through the trial. Justice for her means making sure everyone knows her story. Drop a comment below, and let me know what you think. Should prior domestic violence convictions carry heavier consequences? I'll see you in the next one.